All right, y'all. So we just watched the video twice, and you were asked to take notes on ethos, logos, and pathos. So who would like to share out first? I want you to think about the ethos portion with credibility, honesty. What makes you, whether it's words, things that are not said, things that are said about another person, or even body language, trust and feel his story is credible. Trinity.
Um, just the fact that he was explaining the story from a different perspective and not using his perspective, but he also like mentioned, this is about me if you didn't understand, like if you didn't catch the drift, basically.
Mm-hmm. So it's like a different way to tell a story, right? It's like a different persona, a different version of himself. Okay. What do
Mm-hmm.
you think, Anaya? You also had your hand raised.
At the end, when was like, if you don't know your why, just think of me. He used himself as like a credible source to keep trying to figure out why you're here. Or yeah.
Okay. Thank you. What about Jada?
He also used his students as an example of when he was saying like, my students. He was kind of like giving himself a lot of credit for, when he tells his students certain things, it should be like taken in because of what he's been through,
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So yeah.
Right. And later on, he's talking about, we'll talk about in the logos portion, but like the journey itself, right? Every day is not going to be easy. And I definitely am like another witness to what he's talking about at the school, that like some days are really, really hard, right? Kids are not always going to be respectful. Sometimes kids are going to wild out. Sometimes they might be having their own traumatic episode, right? Based on manifestation of whatever they're going on, whatever they have going on in their lives at home or otherwise. And so he was like, even on the hard days, I have to have another why, right? So he then looked to what was his other credible source, basically. What did he say was his why?
His past,
One more time, Jada.
his past,
His what?
past.
Yes, his past. So himself, as at the end, he's like, so if your why is not big enough to push you, to propel you into your dreams, then remember me. Remember who?
Ezel.
Ezel, right? So his former name when he was a child, that is his why, right? When it gets hard, when he's homeless, when he has struggles, when he has people die in his family, when teaching is rough, right? You still have to hold on to something to keep you motivated, propelled to go on. And he's like, that for me, for him, was Ezel, right? And he would then see Ezel, see himself as a child in our students, right? And furthermore, it wasn't said outright in the video, but you can imagine the power having a black male, not only that, but a STEM teacher, right? Because we know teaching is predominantly females, and furthermore, we need much more teachers of color, right? And specifically, like the students that we worked with, it was really powerful for them to have such a strong black male presence in their lives. So for furthermore, for him to tell this story is pivotal, right? Because so many men, not so much in this class, we only have one male and he's absent today, but in some of my other classes, we've discussed it, right? Black males have it really difficult. And as we talked about earlier, Black females have it even more difficult. But Black males, right, they are, it's like this dichotomy, right? It's like they have to be strong, just like Black females. But if they're not strong, then they're considered like weak. Or if something happens in their life, they might not want to talk to like their friends, their bros about it, because then, oh, I might be perceived a certain way. So the fact that he told this very vulnerable story also gives more credibility, right? Because he could be like, this is horrible. I want to get over it. I'm moving forward. I'm not going to think about this. Even if you could tune it out a little bit, right? It's still there mentally. But not only that, but he's using that story to help himself, to help other people, right? To go forward, to pay it forward. Okay. So now with that in mind, think about logos. So again, Helene, earlier you mentioned that logos to you was what?
Statistics or facts.
Yeah, statistics, facts. But if there's not math, right? He wasn't talking about like math problems, even though he is right now a math teacher. If there's not math, there's not statistics, there's not science, then I want you to think about someone's thought process, someone's logic, the knowledge that they have that they're doing to do something in a systematic way every day, or the knowledge that it would take or to sustain what he's gone through, right? To continue persevering. So think about logically the facts of his life. And let's go briefly in order. So what happened first with the childhood trauma? Sumaya.
I think he lived in his car, I'm sure.
Well,
And
that
like,
was later when he moved to Nashville. So at first, when he's a child in Arkansas, what happened to him first? Let's go to Imani or Adele.
He was abused, and he also didn't have a lot to eat at times.
Exactly. So there was emotional, sexual abuse, and trauma, right? And then on top of that, just like not knowing if you had enough food to survive through that day, eating like he was talking about like cold cuts or out of a can, right? And so then we're gonna cut to what Sumaya was just talking about. Then he finally like kind of made it, right? Like Viola Davis was talking about, she made it over like one hump, right? You got into college, you graduated high school, you survived at least, right? And now he was going to Vanderbilt for what in Nashville? Diamond. Can you hear me?
I don't
There you
know.
go.
No. I don't know.
Okay. Imani. When he moved here, what were his intentions? What were his goals at first? Or Adele.
It was a cancer cure at Vanderbilt. He was trying to
Yeah,
make something.
to study cancer research, right? And then he had even further goals from that, right? He wanted to go to Meharry for what, Jada? Or Anai or anyone, you could chime in.
To do dental school.
Yeah, to do dental school. So he had all these logical goals, right? Like you survive, you go finish high school, you finish school, then you're going to take it a step further, right? And continue all the way through to become a doctor. And so then he was having real struggles. Think about the articles that we've been reading about poverty. There was one particular article that really hit home with me, the one about the homeless college students, right? Thinking about like what they're going through. Like, remember the gentleman, his story, he was like, he had the 10 p.m. curfew. What was that about? Why did he have the 10 p.m. curfew? Remember the homeless college student? There were like two of them, and he had a 10 p.m. curfew from the shelter. And so we were talking about how difficult that would be to actually have to like come home at night, right? And not be able to stay up late studying if you had a job and you were going to college and everything. And I remember it said something about being homeless and hiding it. Do y'all remember that? Okay. And that's similar to what he said, right? So like he literally was living in his car, but he said like no one knew it. And remember at the end of the video with the pictures, what do you notice about him? Specifically that first picture in front of like the Vanderbilt sign and stuff.
He was like happy in like most of his pictures, like even like from his past, he still was like smiling and like he accomplished a lot of things in his
Right.
pictures.
But also think about like the psychology of that. Like struggling through all of that, but trying to keep that joy intentionally. And not only that, but like if you're homeless, you're living in your car, trying to keep up like a professional persona, everything too. It's like takes logic, it takes knowledge, right, to be able to present yourself in a way where it's still like acceptable in society, right? Because people stigmatize people who are homeless or who, you know, have had trauma and things like that. And they'll say like mental illness or crazy or things like that. So think of all of that logos knowledge that he's having to pour in to keep himself right? And then not only that, but something doesn't work. So what, when he was going to Vanderbilt and having the plans to go to Meharry for dental school, what happened to sidetrack him once again, even through homelessness, right? That's already enough of a battle and a struggle. But what else happened that he said was like the straw that broke the camel's back? Anaya.
Just everybody like kept dying. He was basically saying like everyone who was close to him, like his brother and sister, and then his uncle who was like a father figure kind of to him.
Right. So think about like every person that was supposed to be trustworthy with ethos, right? When you're younger, was like abusive, emotionally, sexually, all that. So then you found some people that you can trust, right? And that you really look up to and feel are role models. And then those people at your like hardest level moment in life pass away as well, or murdered, or he didn't give specifics, right? But obviously he lost them, and that's yet another horrific moment in life that he had to then take logic and say, okay, well, I'm still not going to stop. So then after that, he said he had to do something tangible, right? Still with science or STEM, because he was a science teacher when I met him for 2 years, and now he's a math teacher, so he's just all over STEM. So what was his purpose then? What was his like pivotal thing that's inspiring him to move forward, and what is he doing now?
He's teaching students, and I want to say he's like his motivation is teaching students, what he knows and what could possibly um, move them forward in their lives and like what they're going through as well. And also, like, of course, the obvious is what he went through and how he's pushing for it himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you go in to his classes, he definitely has great like classroom management and relationship building skills, and that's why, right? Being vulnerable, just like in my class, y'all feel comfortable. We share out things. If you're with somebody who's like always acting like entitled, or like they like are perfect, or you have to do certain things just this one way, unmoving rigidity, right? You don't feel comfortable, right, sharing your truth, or writing, right, or being like confident to maybe get an answer wrong, right? That's how you learn and grow. But when you are in a room where you feel safe, or with people you're surrounded by that you feel safe, then you're more likely to try things, to learn, to risk failure, right? To risk vulnerability. So when he always tells a version of this story, right, to his students, then the whole year they understand, right? Like, oh, I can go to him. I can go to Professor X and he understands me. Or like what he said, he literally sees himself, Ezel, in those students, right? So what then do you think the Logos next moving forward is? If you could hypothesize, or what do you think like he's thinking, or what do you think uh, future goals are? Because I don't know if you saw at the end the logo, it said Professor X with a brain, and it had like a person in the middle, right, of the brain. So that's not a something like that just happenstance, right? That's something he's doing with his STEM background. What are y'all thinking?
I feel like he's gonna try to go around and try to bring some type of positivity to children's lives in the future, like not just in his community, like probably like around the world. Try to make kids feel like they have something to look up to.
Yeah. He definitely like he went and got somebody to make like a logo for him, and he has an Instagram. I'm gonna share it with y'all when I do your e-learn post later about today's discussion board that you'll have, and about the essay. And he asked me to let y'all know like he has Instagram and you can reach out to him and stuff if you're needing anything. But specifically with the logo and the future goals, he's wanted to be, like you were mentioning, like an administrator or principal, to have an even further impact, right, on education. And he specifically even went even more targeted to the company, the school that we worked at. He went to a KIP himself, and it wasn't great in the Delta region, near, Arkansas and Mississippi. So he had been through things himself there and felt, you know, not safe. So then again, wanting to make other people feel safe, and his like goal is to like kind of get people to talk about their story. So again, that's why I thought it was so pivotal that we use his story in our class, because that's the whole theme of our class, right? Through John Lewis's lens, to use your voice, representation. And what I'm going to tell y'all today with the essay that you're doing is I don't want you to lose sight of that, right? So many of you, you might have had stories that you weren't comfortable sharing with the class when we did peer reviews, or you might have been a little wary to go to the writing center to get feedback on it. But you were like, can you look at it to me? Or, you know, wanted to like do it in a private way, but you still used your voice. And I was encouraging, you know, you could use slang, you could talk like colloquialisms, things like that, and contractions. But we're gonna have to switch gears a little bit, because you already know how I feel about like English and the entitlement of America, making everyone learn English, even immigrants, and not being able to speak like your own truth, your own voice. But then you kind of have to learn to put that mask on, right? Like you're gonna have to use professionalism, you're gonna have to use academic language to finish out your college career. So we're gonna like be able to do both, right? You need to be real sometimes and be able to like give a speech, give scholarship, do research in front of your peers and in front of people you might want to impact. But then you're also going to have to learn that in order to create change, sometimes you have to go in front of other groups that would be standoffish if you spoke or wrote, you know, in a certain way. So you want to be able to do both, right? So that's what we're going to learn here. And today specifically, we're talking about the Ethos, Logos, Pathos essay that y'all are going to have. And it's still about change, but I think you will be a little more comfortable in terms of like doing peer reviews on this essay, and maybe going to the writing center, because it takes a little of yourself personally out of it. You're going to talk about like environment, climate, animal research, things like that. So, and we'll go over the topic list in just a moment when we look at the essay. So thank you very much for engaging and discussing his story, but I very much wanted to make sure that you were exposed to it and that you understood, right? He fits right into what we are trying to learn about ethos, logos, pathos, and how sometimes you have to like target all of your goals, even if you think, right, that something is impossible or that you can't make it. I mean, like he said, even at the end, if your why begins to be not important enough or it's not motivating you enough, then think of someone like him, right, that has made it, has passed all odds and continues to do so even with struggles. All right. So any other comments or questions about that or about ethos, logos, pathos in general before we go over the essay quickly? All right.